Today we're talking about the first flight school that I ever attended, the only flight school that I've ever attended, and let's see what's happened. Apparently it's changed owners and it's expanded a bunch and it's doing all these kinds of things, but really, how is it as a student studying at Montair Aviation? Hello my friends, I'm Adam, welcome back to Late Departure, and today we're going to be talking about Montair Aviation. So when I was young and I had aspirations to be a pilot, I was right out of high school, I had dreamed for my whole life of being a pilot. I was an air cadet, so I did the ground school there, and I, came from, I'd say a mid to low income family. And so I didn't have the funding from my parents to go out and do the training or anything like that. And I had to try to make my own way. So I got a job on the ramp. I worked on the ramp for probably 3-4 years, making absolute minimum wage. It was ridiculous, something like $5-6 an hour. Flight dual training, of course, is many hundreds of dollars an hour, even back then, 15 years ago. And it was really tough. I ended up only getting up once every couple weeks or something like that. And man, I was frustrating. It was so frustrating that after a few years, I actually quit and left and went off to Korea to get a job, make some money, and I ended up doing grad school out there. But it was really heartbreaking that happened. And so definitely now, if any of you are in that kind of situation, you're young, you're hungry, you want to fly, I would definitely recommend trying to develop a career in something probably outside of aviation, a good fallback career, and then make some money and get back into it. But in any case, that's neither here nor there. We're here to talk about Montair Aviation. And back then, I had my first instructor was amazing instructor. His name was Chris Bruner. He won the national competition and got a job at Air Canada. Absolutely amazing pilot, but he was only my instructor for about a week until he had to go off to the big leagues. And I went through a few different instructors, of course, because those instructors were getting hired at the airlines and I was stuck flying once every couple of weeks and I was just sitting there frustrated. But in my time there, the instructors, I had fairly good instructors, except for one or two of them. So I had about 4 instructors total there. 1 or 2 of them were not that great, but the flight school itself, it was kind of a family business. Maintenance was fairly well done. I was on the ramp there, we took good care to make sure that there were no rocks or gravel on the ramp. And overall, it was a pretty decent experience, but something happened at the end of my training there. And something else that kind of frustrated me is they're one of the first schools to open up foreign student training programs. So they're training students from China. They had a Chinese program where they'd have hundreds of students come out from China. They put them in dormitories and train them. And all of a sudden, my priority went down to the bottom of the list. And that was really unfortunate, especially since I was a worker there. I was an employee and I thought that I was close. And I felt really disheartened by that. And at that point, starting from then, and this is again 15 years ago, it just got worse and worse. More and more Chinese, random students. I have nothing against Chinese students, of course. My wife is Chinese, love Chinese people. But there are all these foreign students there, and they were up in the air. They were making a lot of trouble. I almost got run into a few times, or a few close airborne collisions, because Boundary Bay had all these foreign pilots there. None of them could understand what air traffic control was telling them. It was really tough. But the worst thing is, they started prioritizing these foreign students instead of the local students. And I didn't like that. But I had a chance to speak with a current student at Montair. And that student was just gave me a really interesting review, a really good review overall. Well, let's get into it here. So the first question was, how is the availability? And of course, I'm thinking, even now when I visited recently, they still have dormitories, they're still training all the Chinese students, but also, in addition to Pitt Meadows, they also have a base up in Red Deer, Alberta, where they have most of their foreign student training going on. So I was thinking, their planes must be super busy, right? And the student said, no, not at all, actually. This student never had any problem, was booking multiple times a week, had no issues with booking. The 172s were always there when the student needed them. So in terms of plane availability, things were perfectly fine. So in terms of supplemental materials, of course, they do have a package there that they asked him to buy, but he already had all of the materials. So I'm not sure, I wasn't clear about whether they were like, oh, you got to buy this from us, or whether they actually gave the option to go and buy it on Amazon. And, for me personally, I like it when a school considers that, flight training is super expensive. And if they can go out of their way to tell the student, hey, like you can get this from us, or if you want, you can go on Amazon and pick it up as well. It might take a little while. You can get it right now directly from us. Totally your choice. I respect that. I think that's a big integrity move. And that was something that would make me consider that flight school more. But, this is just a standard thing. And he already had the materials, so they didn't force him to buy the materials. They just told them that they had them. So in terms of ratings being pushed on students, this student said that they did not push the ratings on them, that the student's just doing the program, going along steadily and just doing it as he wants to do it. They're not trying to force him to do any extra ratings or anything. And again, that's good. That means that they're not just trying to push him. They're trying to consider what he wants. And really, when it comes down to it, that's one of the most important things. The school is really considering the student's needs, because the customer, they're paying the big bucks. They should be taken care of, right? Now, in terms of paying up front or paying as you go, so the student said that, of course, Montair, they're pay as you go. You don't have to pay anything up front. And actually, the student moved from the Langley Flying School because when the student checked out the Langley Flying School, they wanted the student to pay up front for all the instructor fees or something like that. And I also noticed that too when I checked out the Langley Flying School and I talked with some other students. They mentioned that in some cases they do force you to pay like $5,000, $10,000 up front for instructor fees. Now, I haven't personally gone in there and confirmed this. So again, take this with a grain of salt. If you're a Langley Flying School student and you see this video, please, let us know in the comments or do an interview with me and tell me what your experience is like so I can tell other people about it. But that's just, I would totally agree with him. If I was in that situation, I would immediately search for another school. So he found Montair and he was really happy with his choice. So in terms of making the student doing extra ground time or anything like that, this student said that is absolutely not the case. The student actually finished the private pilot school training in less hours than was required and had minimal ground time except for when it was necessary. And also they let the student do pilottraining.ca, so they weren't forcing the ground school or anything like that. So it all sounds pretty above board and pretty good, to be honest. So in terms of promising a job as a flight instructor, the student said that Montair didn't do that to get him in the door or anything. So again, it's a small thing, but I feel like it's an important thing that schools are conducting themselves with integrity. Now, in terms of maintenance, this student said that they had absolutely no problem throughout their entire private pilot course with maintenance. All the planes were well maintained. They all performed well. He said there was only one issue in the entire time that he did his training, and it wasn't a major issue, and it was something that he was able to switch to another aircraft, no problem at all, because it was, the planes were just available, and it was just well maintained and well scheduled. So that plane availability, as you can see, really comes in handy in times like these, and that might be a reason why you choose a school like Montair, so that you have access to these planes regularly, and you're able to get up as often as you can to fly when you want to fly. Now, in terms of showing off the show pony airplane to get you in the door, this student said that wasn't the case at all. The student went in, they showed all the aircraft that they had, and the student was able to choose the aircraft that he wanted, and there was no problem at all with anything like that. So that's good to hear that they're not just trying to get you in the door by showing you the nicest plane like some of the other schools. The student actually opted for the less expensive models of planes, and the school was totally okay with accommodating that student in that way. Again, which is really nice because it shows that the school is willing to take into consideration the certain situation that the student is facing, maybe financially or something, to help that student's dollar go even further. Now, one of the questions that's most important to me is whether or not the school actually take care of you, whether they are focused on profits or they actually want to sit down with you and make sure that you reach your goals in the way that you want to reach them. And this student said right from the start, they gauged what he wanted and how often he wanted to fly, and they were able to coordinate scheduling that worked with him. And he said overall they were really relaxed. They didn't push anything. And the only thing that they did suggest was if he wants to do some extra training for certain things. And again, they were very laid back about it. They weren't trying to force it on him or anything like that. It was just a suggestion for something that he might want to do in the future. And again, I like that. I like that they weren't forceful, but they did actually sit down, take the time to really schedule out things with the student. That's really important. One last thing, the student pointed out that while there wasn't a waiting list when the student first started, there is one now. So if you're looking for a school to start at right away, it might be more difficult. And also this could also indicate that the student is not, he just finished his program, but that it might get busier there. And now that summer is coming, of course, every school is starting to get very busy. So it might not have the plane availability that it did when this student started. So that's something else you can keep in mind, and something else that you can see in person if you go into the school and ask to see the schedule and find out exactly what the availability really is like. So I feel this was another really great lesson for me personally. I had all these preconceived notions of a lot of these different schools, and a lot of them when I talk with students actually change. So this is one of them. I had a preconceived notion about how busy it was, or what kind of students there were, or whether students were being prioritized in a certain way with foreign or local students or something like that. So this was a really good interview. Again, I was really happy to hear that things are better than they were when I was there. And overall, definitely worth checking out. So if you're looking at Pitt Meadows, for sure, go in, say hi, find out more about the schedule, and see if it might work for you. Well, that's all for today. I hope you all enjoyed this and learned something. And for the rest of you prospective flight school students like myself, again, I hope this really helps you make a good decision on what school you might end up going to. And I hope once you find a school, you have a lot of fun, have a great instructor, fly safe, and really do your best. That's important. Mandatory plane break. So thank you again for joining me on my late departure, and I'll see you next time.